Okay, so we're going to run it as a 10 gate chip spreader. We need to put this side extension housing on. There's number 1 and number 10, which makes it a 2.9 meter wide chip spreader. And to do that, we need to take these end covers off. Alright, with the end cover off, when you put the extension housing on, there's a pin that needs to go through this locating hole here, which then operates the flap gate for gate number 10. Before putting the extension housings on, it can be a good idea to remove the air out of the chip spreader so that there's no pressure on the cylinder here, because you need to get the flap gate. There's a pin on the gate on gate number 10 and 1 that needs to align into this hole. And when you've got air pressure in these cylinders, sometimes it's difficult to get it in. So if you take the air out, it sometimes is easier to locate that hole. So we're now going to take the extension housing off. We're going to put it on. You can see that that gate there needs to line up with the hole. It goes in. Put your over center clamps on. There's one on both sides. And now we've gone to a 10 gate chip spreader across 2.9 metres. We've got the passenger one on as well. And then if I select some gates, and then I'm preloading the box by pressing the preload button, and then I'm going to, okay, so belt and augers are running because I'm preloading, and then when I'm ready I'm going to start spreading. Gates are open, you can see 1 to 5 are open. So while we're running, if for some reason the toggle box loses connectivity between the screen and the toggle box, Ricky, can you pull the cable out of the back? You can now run everything via the screen. So it has the preload, the open, and you can manually touch the gates. And if I preload, then you can see the box is preloading, and the green arrow and augers will stop once the belt, once the hopper is full. How do I press the start button on that? Is that just the open button? Yep, okay. And we've only got one gate open, and we can manually open gates as we need to. There you go. When you're finished, stop the preload, done. In here I have my presets, and so we can select the rock size. You can go in, if I want to manually change that, go to 10 mil, just for the sake of it. Yep, press select, go out, go into presets, and then there you go, 10 mil. Yep. Alright, so go back out, go back into the status. Under the status, so that's where you modify the presets. Ricky, what else is in there?
You can access all of the sensor outputs, as well as any of the switch inputs into the system, the system log, as well as the program info.
Okay, so we've also got the remote control. Pull the red button out the bottom, the e-stop. Bottom's down 3 to 5 seconds, and it automatically comes up with confirmation that the remote has been selected. Okay, so you can see we're pre-selecting from left to right, or we're doing all on or all off. Okay, so the driver's got a preload from the toggle box.
You can open and close the gates,
Yes.
but that's all you can do with the remote.
Okay.
Hydraulically, the operator of the truck is still in control.
Okay, all 10 gates are open. We're spreading rock. 14 mil rock. About 85mm gate opening. You can see the belts going. We're going to raise the chip spreader up to simulate that we're going to tow a trailer. So when you're raising it up, you need to remove the blue chains. Number one, remove the blue chains. If you don't remove the blue chains, you will damage the back of the door jamb because the chip spreader raises up on an arc away from the body. You wouldn't leave these up here, you'd remove them completely if you're towing, but for this we're just going to leave them up there. Okay, so you've got your manual valve bank over here on the left side of the body, and you can see there's a label here, a decal that tells you exactly what they do. The first lever, the first spool, is to operate the left hand auger. The next one is to operate the right hand auger. You're not going to manually run the augers, but we need to have the spool there in the valve bank to do so. The metering bar is the third one along, which is important. You may want to manually raise, increase or decrease the metering bar. The main belt, discharge of the main belt. You need to make sure that if you're going to run the belt manually, that you either have the grain door up or the tailgate up in the air before you either drive forward or reverse the belt, okay? There are no brains on this spool. You can, if you wanted to, manually run the belt with the grain door closed. If you do that, you will damage the grain door, the bottom kicker plate on the grain door, and you could potentially damage the tailgate. So make sure if you're going to manually operate the belt that the grain door or the tailgate are up in the air. And the last one on there is the chip spreader. Down is obviously in chip spreader operating position, and raise is to raise it up in the air. Okay, so we'll now show you how to raise it up. Okay, so before raising the chip spreader, you need to pull the safety pins out on both sides. That's that one there. And we go around to the passenger side. Okay, safety pins are out. Before you raise the chip spreader, if you don't have the control screen on for the chip spreader, you will not have any hydraulics flow to the rear, but you can manually provide hydraulics to the valve bank by pushing this pin in and pulling it out, which now means that I've got hydraulic flow into the valve bank without the screen on. Now I can raise the chip spreader up in the air. Now you will see how far away that chip spreader is from the body. So if you left those blue chains on, you'll certainly pull the back of the body apart. But now, with the chip spreader up in the air, you would put your safety pins back in. On that side there, and put the split pin through it. And on the other side, and then you're good to tow. And there's your ring fetter there. And you're up out of the way. Make sure, obviously, before you raise the chip spreader, that you discharge any product out of the chip spreader, because the back of the chip spreader is open to the back of the body and you'll just have product fall through. So, golden rule, remove all product out of the chip spreader before you tow. You can also stockpile with the chip spreader up in the air. So you can now, if you had product that you needed to get rid of, you can now raise the grain door, not the tailgate obviously, the grain door, and you can run product out through the grain door onto the ground. Lowering of the chip spreader is identical to raise, just the opposite. Before lowering the chip spreader, you need to take the safety pins out and then just lower it down until it bottoms out. You'll hear the hydraulic motor wind up and you'll see it, the foam seals are sitting hard up against the door jamb. Then remember to put the safety pins back in, which have been put back in here. Safety pins there, put the split pin through the other side. Same on this side. Once you've got your safety pins in, if you have override the hydraulic valve here, you need to make sure that you push it back in so that you're now going to be using the brain system inside the cabin to be running the hydraulics. That means now we've got no hydraulics to the rear unless we turn the brain system on in the cabin. Okay, we're now going to discuss the control box on the driver's side rear of the body. Opening the control box, there's a key there. You can use a screwdriver if you don't have a key. Inside the control box is a couple of solenoids, and the solenoids control the tailgate and grain door. The top one here controls the grain door, the bottom one here controls the tailgate. You can see there's a label here just in case you get caught. You can manually open the grain door via the push button here and the tailgate via the push button here. So if you have a look in here, you'll see here it's a push button. If you push and rotate 90 degrees, you will lock the air in for that solenoid. Okay. Same with the top one there. You can see up there it is. So it's momentary, but you can push, rotate it about 15 degrees and it will lock in place. You can see that we've got a pressure regulator here, set to 120 psi. Okay, so now we're going to remove the chip spreader, and the first thing we need to do is we need to put the chains on, and you need to make note that the chains go on the inside eyelets of the chip spreader. Do not lift the chip spreader up on these eyes on the outside. They're only for the blue chains to hold the chip spreader against the body. So you need to put the chains on the inside of the body, and then you need to pivot it so that they come up into a center point, which we're using the overhead gantry for ours. Next of all, John's going to show you, we need to start removing our air and electrical connections. They're all pokey-oak, you can only put the connection in the right spot, socket. And again, if you were going to use this for asphalt, you would remove these blue shackles altogether, but for this purpose we'll just put them to the side. Okay, next we need to remove the hydraulic lines, and again every single hydraulic line has a different fitting connector, so you cannot make a mistake and put them on the wrong ones. Again, you're going to be putting the rubber bungs on the connectors as well to protect them from dirt and ingress, but for this particular exercise we're just going to take them off quickly. Then you need to remove the safety pins, which should be in there. And they need to be in there for both lower and raise. It's not so critical in the lowered position, but certainly in the raised position it's more critical. Otherwise you're only using the hydraulics to keep the chip spreader up in the air. Next you need to remove the safety retainer pins, which are these little units here, and if they don't come out easily you may need to get a crowbar in the spot and just to jimmy them just to take the weight off, like that, and then the safety pins will be able to be removed. So he's got the split pin out. And pin's gone. And again we need to do the other side. Now that the pins have been removed, this is now ready to take off, and using our gantry here we're just going to take the weight a little bit and then we'll pull it backwards. So you can see we've taken a bit of weight. Okay, so he's just jiggling it up and down a little bit just to make it easier to come out. There's a lot of paint on there when they're new and they tend to just jam a little bit, but now that's free. Okay, so now the chip spreader's removed. Now, the next thing we need to do is put the legs on the chip spreader, the storage legs. Okay, so now we need to remove these transport side covers, which there's over center clamps on both sides. We remove those covers. and we'll now put on the legs that you use to store the chip spreader. Okay, so now we've put the legs on and we've put the chip spreader on the ground. This is what it looks like when it's stored in the position there. Now that you've removed your chip spreader, you can put any other attachment into the same implement arms here, and they mount on the same way as the chip spreader with the safety pins that need to be put in place. And that's the rear of the unit without the chip spreader on. Okay, because we've got a towing hitch here and Dana has requested a cover over the top of the towing hitch, we put a mud flap there, but make sure that you push the mud flap back, otherwise you're going to find it difficult to put the chip spreader in place. Okay, so now we're going to show you the process to reinstall the chip spreader, which is essentially the same as removing it, but the opposite. We're going to discuss the maintenance side of the chip spreader. So inside the chip spreader you've got your 10 air operated rams that open and close the gates, and on each gate there is a grease nipple that you need to grease, and you can see the grease nipples on either side of the gate just there. So there's one there on the gate and there's one just there on the gate. They're not the easiest things to get to, but they're there. So you've got them on, 2 grease nipples on each gate. You've also got them on your metering bar pivot points down here, and you can manually open and close the gates using the MAC valve. Now these MAC valves here, each one of those operates a gate, so these are 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10, and you've got 1 through to 5 over there. Underneath there is a little pad, and if you pop something in there, and I'll try and get the view better, you just need to push it up and you can see you can manually open. If I get my view better, you can manually open each one of the gates. You can manually open and close to check the activation. Okay, the grease nipples in the augers. There's 2 augers, a left and a right. You can see there's a grease nipple just there on that side, on the inboard side, and you have to come around and take the end cover off to get to the grease nipple up here. It's a little bit difficult, but there it is up there. You can see the grease nipple is just there. So each auger has 2 grease nipples. Okay, we say if you're single shifting this 5 days a week, you need to grease those grease nipples on the auger once a week, and the grease nipples on the gates once a week. Okay, the other grease nipples that you need to do, there are grease nipples on the door locks up underneath here. There is one up there, and there is another one on the hinge of the door lock over here. There are also grease nipples on the air operated rams, and there are 4 grease nipples at the front up there on the top shaft, and each bearing block, this is your lay shaft, there's a grease nipple on top of the bearing block there, one on the other side, and down at the back here there's a grease nipple on the drive shaft on this side. Obviously on the other side you've got a valve, you've got your hydraulic motor and gearbox, so there's no grease nipple on that side there. Okay, but again on this side you've got your air operated ram, you've got your grease nipples front and rear. So as discussed with the grease nipples, you've got 2 grease nipples on each gate. You've got a grease nipple on the bottom and top pivot point on your metering bar hydraulic ram, and there is one in there that you can see right up in the corner there. So there's 2 hydraulic rams for the metering bar, so you've got 2 grease nipples for each of those, and you've got the 2, one on either end of the augers, and there's 2 augers.